I'm not asking you about what has changed. I'm asking
clearly changed.
Was it wrong?
He's clearly changed.
I'm asking you, was it wrong?
I think he's making changes.
Was it wrong,
I don't
Ben?
think...
Far-right MAGA figure Ben Ferguson showed up once again on Abby Phillip's show, doing exactly what he's known for, coming across as combative and evasive while pushing claims that many critics argue are misleading or inaccurate. We're going to break down another intense exchange from Abby Phillip's show featuring Ben Ferguson and the panel. I've got some perspectives to add on this one as well. Let's dive into it together.
Tonight, Melania Trump is calling for Jimmy Kimmel to be fired over the White House Correspondents' Dinner themed skit on his show last week. Kimmel's monologue, which was made days before an alleged gunman attempted to assassinate President Trump, included him appearing at a mock version of the annual event with jokes directed at the president and his family.
In the unfortunate event that our president has a medical emergency tonight, do we have a doctor in the house? Do we have a Jesus in the house? I always confuse them, too. I get why you think you're Jesus. This guy, every time he walks into a room, people say, Christ, he's back. And of course, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
In a social media post, the First Lady called Kimmel a coward, saying enough is enough. Donald Trump went further, saying that Kimmel's jokes were beyond the pale and a despicable call to violence. Representatives for ABC and Kimmel did not immediately respond to CNN's request for comment. And Sarah Ellison is now with us at the table. Sarah, we're back again here with Jimmy Kimmel and the president and the First Family. Do you think that this time is different?
Well, I think certainly Donald Trump hopes it's different because this is his opportunity to actually try to win this fight. I mean, there's nothing that enrages him more than being beaten. And that's exactly what happened last fall, which you're referring to, which is that after the FCC sort of jawboned ABC into trying to get Kimmel off the air, they did so for a week. And then he was, after a massive backlash, he was brought back on. And that was the first really, I don't know if it was the first, but it was one of the most important moments when Donald Trump was trying to go after not only the media, but law firms and higher education when there was a real backlash and he was unsuccessful. And I think I talked to people around him that he is very eager to undo that defeat. And he wants another shot at Kimmel. And he was obviously upset about what he said, but that was I don't think that it was an actual fear of that he was calling for violence.
So, yeah,
Wow.
Look,
It's amazing that we sit at this table and everything is Donald Trump's fault. And when you call and put up a picture of the First Lady and you laugh about her being a widow and her husband being killed who's already been shot, that somehow that is Donald Trump's fault and he's mean to Jimmy Kimmel and wants Jimmy Kimmel gone. I don't know who you talked to the White House. I'm around the White House. I promise you a lot more than you are. The president has not talked about this at all.
Well,
at all. Like, sure. It's on the list of things he gives you know what about, it's down here. But when you go on TV...
The thing that he sent a Truth Social post about this?
After it was said, you can respond. And by the way, if this was a joke, Jimmy Kimmel could have immediately been a comedian and said, hey, in light of what happened tonight, that was a joke. I apologize for it. I'm sorry. Because Monday. A real comedian would say, but he didn't. And you want to no, you would do it immediately. At Twitter, I can tweet right now on your show.
But hold on. I think the question I have
he knows he's not going to get fired, but he wanted her to be a widow.
Do you think he was referring to Donald Trump being murdered, or do you think that he was referring to a 56-year-old woman who was married to an 80-something-year-old man?
I think when you've been shot at 3 times and now, or this being the third and 4 different times he'll try to kill you, yeah, I'm going to go out there and say Jimmy Kimmel's a smart guy,
well,
and I think he's saying a widow, and I think the audience laughed that way. They weren't laughing at an age joke.
I'm not going to try to be clairvoyant about what Jimmy Kimmel meant.
It's a weak stretch.
But I will say that we played the lead up to the joke so that you could hear the rest of the context. I'm not saying you need to like the joke, but the rest of the joke was, the president, what if something were to happen to the president tonight? Is there a doctor in the house or Jesus?
We've been here before several times with Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, he hates Trump. I think the first lady.
He's a comedian.
Nobody's questioning that part.
No, he's crossed the line.
Nobody's questioning that.
He's totally crossed the line on what he likes Trump.
It doesn't matter.
You think he likes Trump?
It's
not. I'm not arguing First Amendment. He can say what he wants to say, but it's public airways.
Hold on a second.
ABC should fire him. ABC should fire him. The first lady is right.
If I made that joke,
that's not an FEC interaction. That is what ABC should be doing.
If I made that joke on my show joking, I would be fired as I should be, especially if someone tried to kill that person. I didn't apologize immediately.
Charles.
Donald Trump posts mock violence on his Truth Social before that Twitter.
So therefore, got it.
So can you stop talking for just half a second? That would be great. All the time, and we take it as a joke. He he posted a video of him beating up CNN in 2017. You retweeted that and said, isn't this funny? So it's a joke then when he is doing the violence, but not
if we're going to go back to that, let's go back to it. Was he doing it in response to something that CNN had said, and it turned into a back and forth? That's different than talking about someone who's been shot.
It literally doesn't matter.
If I made a joke about someone, you being a widower tonight, and then someone took a shot at you, would you think that was a joke?
About protecting speech, not popular speech.
I'm not saying that you have the right to say something stupid.
Not popular.
You get to say dumb things. It doesn't mean that a corporation has to employ you.
Exactly. And they can choose to employ him or not, and they can choose to keep him. And Melania Trump and Donald and
Charles Blow is absolutely right in the point he's making here. The first and most obvious thing that needs to be said is this. Jimmy Kimmel is a comedian, while Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Shouldn't there be a clear distinction between those two roles? And look, I don't see anything wrong with what Jimmy Kimmel said, but Ben Ferguson and others in that same lane try to spin it like, oh, that's outrageous, while at the same time excusing all the violent, disturbing, and over-the-top rhetoric that's come from Donald Trump. And there's so much of it, it's honestly hard to keep track. I even did a video recently where I highlighted several examples. Him calling people vermin, labeling others as enemies of the country, enemies of the people, and so on. It just keeps going. And that's not even getting into comments about wiping out entire civilizations. If Donald Trump wants to step away from politics and try his hand at hosting a talk show or doing stand-up, leaning into that insult comic style, then fine. Go for it. But if he's going to hold the office of president, then act like it. Shouldn't there be a higher standard for the president of the United States compared to a comedian? That seems like a pretty reasonable expectation. Maybe it sounds naive, but I've always thought the president shouldn't be spending time firing off posts on social media, sharing memes, and constantly engaging in online back and forths. That time should be going toward improving infrastructure, creating jobs, lowering gas prices, working toward actually ending conflicts instead of just talking about it, and focusing on the many responsibilities that come with trying to make people's lives better. I get that Donald Trump may not prioritize those things, and I understand that Ben Ferguson and others aligned with MAGA don't necessarily focus on improving everyday lives either. But I still think most people expect the president to operate on a level.
Donald Trump have the right to object to what he has said. All of that is free speech. That is how it works. The idea that he wants to put pressure on the network to get rid of him because he doesn't like the speech, that steps out of his space.
He doesn't like people making jokes about his wife being a widow after people are trying to kill him.
He's been enormously successful going after the media in a variety of different ways.
Who's gotten fired because of him? Give me a list.
Are you familiar?
Who big has he talked about that's been fired?
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert hasn't been fired. We saw on the show and y'all said it was because of the economics of TV. That was the entire discussion.
You said that.
I said he was. I did not say that. I said that no one was watching anyone in half the country.
Do you think that Donald Trump has not put an enormous
table.
amount of pressure on media organizations? Was he being feted by David Ellison at a private dinner just a few days before
Barack Obama, when he was president, met with all those guys too. No,
I mean,
I'm not.
Okay, but it was completely legal. You cannot. That's
presidents meet with CEOs of almost every company out there.
President Trump has gotten involved in mergers in a way that presidents don't do.
And also, was there a massive corporate deal?
Okay, this is a new standard.
Do you think that was
appropriate? We'll go back and look at the Obama
Do you think
books.
it was appropriate for him to be meeting with the CEO of a company that has an active merger that's going to go before his administration, where he's the
All
CEO in chief?
administrations meet with the leaders of companies when there's, especially.
You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Go back and look at the Obama years and how many CEOs were at the residence on a continual basis. Go look at Hunter Biden, who was meeting with his dad.
We were talking before the break about Trump's tone on Saturday night, and I think he actually attempted to strike a measured tone in those moments after the shooting. But he came out of a First Amendment dinner where he was excited to roast the press, which is totally what he, should have been doing. And then Monday morning, here we are, and it's a question of whether the First Amendment extends to Jimmy Kimmel, or does it not?
I don't think we're questioning that it should. I think we're saying that ABC should remove him. That's not a government-enforced action. That is ABC. ABC can. I'm not arguing that. ABC has the choice to do it, but I'm suggesting they should. Well, and I think advertisers should take note of it too.
Well, he also said he's going to address this tonight. I understand what you're saying, that he could have tweeted something quickly, but he said he's going to address it tonight on his show. But look, I think that it is not right or fair to say that the left, Jimmy Kimmel, Democrats are the only ones who are attacking Donald Trump. That is simply, he also has a divisive rhetoric, which is why it would be lovely to see the tone that we saw from Donald Trump after the White House Correspondents' Center. If he could set the tone for the country as the leader of this country, set the tone. I understand things have happened in the past, but there is the future.
He can't do it. At this point, it's pretty clear Donald Trump is not going to suddenly change. We've watched nearly a decade of this behavior, and nothing suggests he has the ability or even the intention to act in a more presidential way. It's just not in him. And a large portion of the country, something like 70%, seems to recognize that reality by now.
That we have to look forward to, and he has the power as the President of the United States to actually do a reset, set the tone in the right direction.
Is there a responsibility that lies on anyone else but Donald Trump, that after Donald Trump and the multiple assassination attempts, is there, because everything...
Donald Trump carries the highest level of responsibility, Ben Ferguson. As the President of the United States, at least in theory, the expectations on him should be far greater than those placed on Jimmy Kimmel or any podcaster who happens to say something Ben Ferguson disagrees with.
It's been about Trump responsibility all night. Is there any responsibility for Jimmy Kimmel to read the room and realize that, hey, this guy's been shot at a couple of times. Maybe I shouldn't make a joke about the first lady.
This is a fair question for a Jimmy Kimmel. Not about what can he do, but about taste.
Right. The taste question is
so to answer his question, I mean, is there a conversation to have that's like this joke? You have a right to say it, but it's in poor taste.
Yes. Also, but here's the thing. Donald Trump can't give that lesson. This is the same person who pushed the conspiracy, first of all, made fun of Paul Pelosi for being attacked, who was almost killed, made fun of him for being attacked, and then pushed the conspiracy theory that the glass was broken from the inside out and not from the outside in. And the basis of that conspiracy theory was that was Paul Pelosi's gay lover. This is the same person who, when Melissa Hortman was actually assassinated in Minnesota, pushed the conspiracy theory by reposting a video on his Truth Social that Governor Tim Walz was involved, and the question mark was whether or not he had her assassinated.
I understand you don't like Trump. Is there any accountability for anybody else in the world besides Donald Trump?
He cannot, and no one defending him cannot tell me anything about civility.
Hold on a second, Ben. I asked Charles to respond to your question.
He didn't.
Let me ask you to respond to his. When President Trump does the things that he describes, he shared a video of supporters saying the only good Democrat is a dead Democrat. He's posted a video showing President Biden hogtied, et cetera, et cetera. You could go on and on. Is there accountability, responsibility for him to not do those things?
I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show. If I had just been shot at again, had someone trying to kill me again, I think the president's rhetoric from the White House and saying, we're going to do this dinner. It is important to have this dinner. We're going to do this quickly. We're going to come together. I saw people coming together. That was an incredible moment of unity, but he gets no credit for it. I understand that.
Well, I mean,
but I go back to the point.
My question was,
you also didn't answer the question.
Was
sure
it
I did.
wrong?
I said he's clearly trying. Unlike you guys are like, it's all Donald Trump's fault.
My question was, is there a responsibility for President Trump to not behave the way that he has behaved in the past? And can you just say it was wrong? He shouldn't have done it.
I go back to what I said.
Responsibility for networks to police themselves.
I'm talking to Ben about the reciprocal of what I just asked Charles a reciprocal, the same question, but on the reciprocal side.
Has changed.
You can just. I'm not asking you about what has changed. I'm asking you, was it wrong?
He's clearly changed.
I'm asking you,
I think he's making changes.
Was it wrong?
I don't think every tweet he would have put out what I put out. I've said on that show before.
The president celebrated the death of Robert Mueller.
It still is amazing to me tonight that we are sitting.
Just about every exchange that Abby Phillip has with Ben Ferguson follows that same pattern. And honestly, she shows a remarkable level of patience dealing with him. I've said it before, there are plenty of commentators who frustrate me, but Ben Ferguson stands out as one of the most persistently combative and deflective voices in these discussions. The dynamic between Abby Phillip and Ben Ferguson often feels less like a balanced debate and more like someone trying to keep the conversation grounded while the other keeps dodging the point. The way she addresses him sometimes even comes across like a familiar situation, almost like a teacher trying to get a student to take responsibility. It's a kind of back and forth, okay, Ben, what happened? Followed by a long explanation that avoids the core issue. Yes, but can you acknowledge your part? And again, the focus shifts somewhere else. The pattern just keeps repeating deflection, justification, and circling away from the original point. That's what makes these interactions so frustrating to watch. Instead of a straightforward discussion, it turns into a loop where accountability never quite lands, and the conversation keeps getting pulled off track.
Here, and it's all Trump's fault that he keeps getting shot at because
this
of rhetoric.
actually is no longer about Trump. This is
it
now
sure
about
is.
you, Ben Ferguson.
Every conversation here has been somehow this is Trump's fault, and therefore he deserves
This
to
is
be shot
actually
at.
not about Trump anymore. It's about you.
Exactly.
It's about whether or not you are willing to say that wrong is wrong. It's wrong when Jimmy Kimmel does it. It's wrong when Donald Trump does it.
I go back to what I said a moment ago. I think clearly Donald Trump has changed his rhetoric and is moving in a direction that you guys should say that's encouraging. I think what he said Tuesday night was exactly what a president
All right, guys, we have to go, but I'll let Mark.
No, there is a moral relativism here. There is, Abby. And let me ask you. It's been getting a lot of attention on social media that James Carville was saying, I don't want him to just die. I want to see him tortured and die.
I want to see him suffer.
How long till he's back on CNN?
I have no idea. James Carville has not been on the show. So, I mean, look, I did not hear those comments. Those are not things that he should have said.
So
I don't have any problem saying
we can
that
agree.
at all.
We can agree that it's a Democrat or Republican.
So back to Jimmy Kimmel then.
Guys, hold on. No, Mark, seriously. I have no problem saying that something like that is beyond the pale and shouldn't be in the public dialogue. That's not my issue. I don't have a problem saying that. I don't have a problem saying that Jimmy Kimmel's joke was a bad joke. The question is, can we all say that? Can we say that about Jimmy Kimmel and about the President of the United States?
The President of the United States.
Okay.
But isn't there also
That's all I'm asking.
He's not a comedian.
That's
He
all
is
I'm
the
asking.
president.
Isn't there also responsibility for ABC?
Listen,
Police their ways?
ABC, yeah, absolutely.
But they won't.
ABC's responsibility.
Yes.
They're a private corporation.
Yes.
They get to decide.
That's-
Not
I
the
agree.
president,
I agree.
not
That's
the
what I
first
said.
lady. Okay, not the FCC chairman.
I agree with you.
Next for us.
And here's Ben Ferguson again, repeating the same line. Can't you at least give the president some credit? Like somehow the expectation is that if Donald Trump goes a short stretch without saying something inflammatory, that alone deserves recognition. As if the standard has dropped to the point where simply not crossing a line for a few moments is considered an achievement. But that's exactly the issue. The bar has been set so low that basic restraint is being framed as something praiseworthy. The response to that is pretty straightforward. He's the President of the United States. This isn't a role where minimal effort or brief moments of discipline should earn applause. The expectation should already be higher than what we demand from a late-night host like Jimmy Kimmel or any other public commentator. So no, the idea isn't to hand out praise for a few minutes of toned-down behavior. The expectation is consistency, responsibility, and a level of conduct that matches the position. That's what leadership is supposed to look like. But this kind of framing, shifting the focus, lowering expectations, and redirecting criticism is a pattern you see repeated often. It turns into a cycle where accountability gets diluted and the conversation drifts away from the core issue. Curious to hear your take on it. Where do you land on this debate? Do you think figures like Jimmy Kimmel should face consequences for what they say, or should comedians have broader freedom compared to political leaders?